Julius, Malema, thanks for your time. Welcome to Kaya FM 95.9.
Thank you. Thank you.
4 years of the EFF, you celebrated in the coming days. How do you look back, firstly, on the organization's successes? What have you done well?
Well, we have managed to establish an organization called the EFF. It has got branches, regions, and all provinces in good standing. It has got members of parliament, it has got members of provincial legislatures, and 827 councillors all over South Africa. We exist, or rather have representatives in the almost 90% of the municipalities. We have managed to give our people some pieces of land in the other parts of the country. We have managed to radicalize parliament and make parliament hold the executive accountable, because the executive had captured parliament. We have raised the issues that affect the poor of the poorest in the country, and we are happy that we are the role player in the political landscape in South Africa.
What's been more difficult, and where have you hit potholes?
It has been difficult to build and make a serious penetration in KZN, Eastern Cape, Western Cape, or just to say coastal provinces. And that's why we're now going to have our rally in KZN as an attempt to infiltrate that part of the country and make sure that we've got a strong presence.
Some analysts might say that if you build a movement which has a very high concentration of young people who haven't perhaps had the experience of either civics or trade unions, it's harder to get them into the kind of the discipline of a movement. Has that been your experience at all?
Well, we're dealing with a mass movement that brings about the different types of characters, majority of whom are joining politics for the first time. So we just have to be patient with them, and we have to, inculcate the culture of organizational discipline in those new members. We have to teach them, we have to carry them along and not be impatient, because we are a new organization.
I've heard an expression that you mobilize with poetry, not you, but in politics you mobilize with poetry, but you must organize with boring prose. And my question to you is this: having got people excited about the EFF, because I think there was huge excitement, was it difficult to say to people, okay, now this is slow, this is hard, this is inch by inch rather than mile by mile?
Well, majority of our people are young people, and they are energetic.
Yes.
In nature, and you have to keep up with that energy. You have to harness it. You have to give it direction. From time to time, we say to them, "Hamba kancane," because we may not need that type of an approach here. It might have worked there. It can work here.
Yes.
So it's part of the work that we come to experience from time to time.
Have you changed over these 4 years as a political person?
No, not at all. We still firm on our non-negotiable pillars. We still a radical movement. We still advance the struggle for economic freedom.
I meant you as an individual. Has your sense and strategic priorities in politics shifted as an individual? Have you thought, that was a lesson learned?
Of course, I mean, as you grow, you come to realize that certain things could have been done differently. Maturity comes with age, and wisdom comes with experience.
In theory, at least.
So we have come to accept that perhaps some of the things we could have done them differently. Yeah. And a lot of mistakes will be committed as we go along. You see, the problem with African leadership and our leaders in general is that they are unable to commit to accept when they've committed a mistake. They think that is a sign of weakness, but the reality is that that is a sign of confirmation that you are human, and you'll always make human errors. There will be some, misjudgment on issues. You have to learn from them and not repeat similar mistakes, because once you repeat them, then they are no longer mistakes. It means that is who you are.
You talk, Mr. Malema, about radicalizing Parliament. Some people might interpret that as the things they see on TV, State of the Nation address, and so on. Are you talking just about that, or are you saying that Parliament has been fundamentally changed in its own approach due to the EFF?
Parliament has changed on its own. The problem is the Speaker of Parliament. I mean, look at the SABC inquiry, for instance. You have had, for the first time, members of Parliament speaking as one, confronting the executive and the shenanigans that are happening at the SABC. So it's not only during the State of the Nation. In the committees, in the economic cluster, we are highly active there, because that's where we are feeling very strong that that's when change needs to happen. And big financial institutions, big companies being called to come and account, and members of Parliament taking very hardline positions and not being very kind to corrupt activities.
What do you make of the ANC moving leftward, if I can use that expression, on certain positions, and particularly on land? Are they doing it because those are their heartfelt beliefs, or are they doing it because if they don't, they fear electoral defeat?
No, they don't believe in those things. We gave them an offer to amend the constitution and expropriate land without compensation. They did not accept it. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma says she's accepting it, but she never criticized the ANC for having not voted with the EFF on the day we're talking expropriation of land without compensation. So they use it. It's not even used by the ANC, it's used by a faction in the ANC as their electoral theme towards December conference. The same thing with Cyril. Cyril says he's anti-corruption and all that. He wants a commission of inquiry. He knows that commission of inquiry will never come, so it's easier said than done. If Cyril is serious about fighting corruption, why is Cyril not opening a case against the people he thinks are committing corruption in the country? In the absence of the commission of inquiry, what will work is a Criminal Procedure Act. Let him exercise the options provided for in the Criminal Procedure Act, open a case and all that. Cyril, the anti-corruption activist, he has never opened a single case in a country which is characterized by a lot of corruption. Yet he wants us to believe that he's an anti-corruption activist. It's a lip service. He just says that. From there, he goes back home into his comfort zone.
Since you mentioned the elective conference in December, is there an outcome in that is better for the EFF that might not be better for the country? In other words, if the ANC picked a leader who's willing to tolerate and allow things to remain pretty much as they are, it gives you a much better target come 2019. However, it's not terribly good for the country as a whole. Do you have a view on that as EFF? How you want that to go?
Either way, we don't have a problem. Whether it's Cyril, whether it's Nkosazana, is the same. None of them can rescue the ANC. It has reached a point of no return. It will not be rescued by anyone. So whether Cyril comes, maybe they will lose with 48%. If Nkosazana comes, maybe it's 35%.
And who wins? What's the lie of the land? Let's say, for the sake of argument,
the EFF must win. The EFF will have to win, and if the EFF doesn't win, the coalition will win.
And in terms of your prospects for 2019, before we look at numbers and who might win, these feel to many people like very dangerous times in the country. We're getting death threats delivered to senior people in government. We're getting people killed on a regular basis in KZN and now in the Eastern Cape. How concerned are you about the safety of people in the in the 2019 election and your members in particular?
Well, when we joined the politics, we knew that the highest price to be paid is death.
Yes.
And we are not really shaken by what is happening. And it doesn't mean we are living a reckless life, or we're not taking some measures to ensure that our members and ourselves are pretty much safe against this violence meted against politicians. So It is going to be difficult as we go closer, because now it is still more inside the ANC, because they killed this one, because this one threatens the prospects of me becoming a councillor. But once they see that even after killing this one, there is another one outside who's still, preventing my chances of becoming this or that, then they will come for us outside. So we have always said to our members, they must exercise a lot of restraint and then always be, in a company of other fellow fighters and ensure that they are all safe.
One of the other clouds that could hover over a 2019 election is the integrity of the process. We've had all sorts of institutions. You, as the EFF, have said institutions at the highest level are captured. Are you confident and sure that that couldn't happen to the IEC?
Well, you remember when the chairperson of the IEC was appointed, we opposed that because we saw that as an attempt to capture the IEC. The problem is not much more at the top. The problem is with electoral officers who are engaged in corrupt activities and stealing of votes. And we thought that we must put strong party agents to look after our votes, and the opposition parties must work together. So in the suburbs where the DA is strong, it must not only look after the DA's votes, it must look after all other opposition parties' votes. Where the EFF is strong, must look after its votes and the votes of other political parties. So there must be a cooperation like that, because the ability of the IFP to reclaim Ngotu, it was because they were vigilant at that level and could not allow any vote rigging to take place. There's going to be a huge attempt to steal the votes in 2019, but we're more than ready, and we're going to train our people to be on the extreme high alert.
How would you describe your relationship with the DA? If I was an outsider
we have absolutely no relationship. We don't even hold bilateral with DA. We meet DA in Parliament, we meet DA in the corridors of Parliament, we meet DA in the opposition party meetings, where we'll be strategizing for this or that case, motion of no confidence, a march for opposition parties, and all that. We have no hotline taking place between EFF and DA.
That's on a practical level, but how would you describe, is it warm, is it fraternal? Do you see eye to eye on enough things to be able to work together? I mean, how would you describe it?
We don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. That's why we're not in a coalition with them.
Yes.
If we're seeing eye to eye, we will be in a coalition with them, but because we differ in a very huge way. So that's why we don't see eye to eye. The immediate thing that makes us to exchange a lot of talk is corruption, which is taking place in the country. You may find that we have put a case in and they want to join the case, or they've put the case in, we want to join it. We think they didn't put this or that aspect in the case.
Yes.
Yeah, and Jacob Zuma as well is the talking point. But there's no point of talking on how do we complement each other, how do we work together as EFF and DA, whatever. And we've always ensured that the DA listens to small partners in their coalition, because the DA was taking those partners for a ride, did not want to give them a hearing. It wanted to behave like a big brother. And we said, no, you cannot do that. You have to respect these people, you have to listen to them.
Come 2019, the likelihood of coalition being the form of government that we have, I would think it's pretty high. Are you starting to think ahead of what part you'd want to play in that coalition, or do you wait for the votes to be counted?
Well, we will work with everyone. We have got our non-negotiable cardinal pillars. We have to talk about them. We have to persuade each other and ensure that we do not compromise each other's ideological and political standpoints. So as long as such people are more than willing to make a contribution to make South Africa safe and make South Africa a home for everyone, and ensure that our people benefit from this government. We are not opposed to working with anyone. We are not suffering from uncontrollable ambition for power. We believe very strongly in the EFF that it looks like power sharing is the most effective way of checking those who are in power in permanent check and ensure that they do not become corrupt because of absolute power.
The battle against corruption and the battle against the president, which is something that the EFF has been leading the charge on, how would you describe the state of play now? What if you were to give a state of the corruption battle address, what would you say?
Well, we are fighting corruption with everything we have. The unfortunate part of it is that law enforcement in South Africa is captured, and the NPA has closed shop, is no longer existing except to prosecute petty crimes like shoplifting and those things. But otherwise, they are not doing anything. The works are useless, are not arresting prominent people who are involved in corrupt activities, even when evidence is presented before them. So the state institutions have been compromised, they are captured, and we are trying our level best to ensure that they do their job. And we will not stop from campaigning against corruption and exposing corruption everywhere where it takes a place, even though there is no response from law enforcement. Our responsibility as the current leadership is to ensure that these things are put on record for generations to come, so that we are not, all of us, going to be painted with the same brush, that what have you done when these people were eating away our country.
My sense, because I watched the press conference when you were briefing the media and through them the nation about your views on Transnet and what you'd found, that there was a degree of something that you were trying to convey to people, saying we cannot do this all on our own, that there has to be a certain point in which the country, either as groups of individuals or larger masses, step up. Was that from a point of some exhaustion on your side? Maybe exhaustion is too strong, but some fatigue, saying, listen, we can't do this.
No, my worry was that fatigue will start kicking in.
Yes.
Especially amongst the people who are engaged in this program of exposing corruption. And once fatigue kicks in, then corruption will be institutionalized, and then we become a banana republic. And I'm saying to the country, in most countries, once there are such things exposed, like the manner in which we were doing, they will be followed by some form of protest or some president or a minister stepping down. No. In South Africa, when you expose all sorts of things, the ANC gets more votes. And what are the people saying? Do they glorify thuggery? Do they glorify criminality? What is this? And I said to some of the people, maybe it is because our people have got culture of protecting criminals, petty criminals in the townships and villages where we come from. Children buy fridges, children buy microwaves, unemployed children. And parents never get to ask them, where did you get the money to buy all of this? So we start by accepting crime in our own families. And that's why we don't have a problem of electing a criminal as a president. So that alone will demoralize these whistleblowers who are feeding us information with the hope that something will happen. But the negative keeps on happening.
So on the one hand, just picking up on what you've been saying over the last few minutes, on the one hand, we've got a criminal justice system that will not investigate, never mind prosecute. On the other hand, we've got a South African populace, for whatever reason, that is not taking to the streets in the kind of numbers we see in a place like Venezuela, where literally cities come to a standstill. What then changes things? Does that mean you waited out till 2019?
No. We have to work. We have to continue mobilizing people who are mobilizing them for the 8th of August. And We are mobilizing them now for the 29th of July in eThekwini. Everywhere we are going, we must conscientize society. We must say to society, there is a rot which is taking place, and you guys have to stand up and do something about it. 2019 is a product of the work being done before the actual year of elections.
I want to turn to something different, Mr. Malema, and ask you about your conversations with business over the past 4 years. I think you indicated early on that you're happy to meet corporate captains, women and men at the top of the commanding heights of the economy. Have those conversations shifted in any way over 4 years, particularly in terms of maybe the questions they ask you or the answers they give when you put questions?
Well, the business is a very difficult sector of society to deal with.
Yes.
And they are used to a certain way of doing things. And to get them to shift is not going to be an overnight activity. At the beginning, there wouldn't be any big business willing to meet the EFF. There wouldn't be big business willing to even come here into the offices of the EFF. But today, EFF is in a permanent exchange with big business, with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, with the big captains of the industries, trying to persuade them to start doing things differently, empower their workers, give some shares to their workers, empower the communities where they are conducting their business, to also contribute towards the redistribution of the land and agree to it, and whether it is through expropriation without compensation or not, let them make their input and let their input be heard. Let the conversation also take place from amongst business people. So the attitude has changed a little bit, and there is that element of recognition.
Are they more willing to support you financially?
Well, we are reluctant to take money of big business. Because you know that the saying that says the hand that feeds you controls you. And we've not been receiving money from a big business. We have been receiving some money from individuals who are pretty much middle class and not the owners of the means of production.
If we meet again in another year's time, the EFF will be 5 years old. What would you like to say is the point that you've reached? In other words, the next 12 months, what are your specific goals?
Well, we want to grow this organization. We want it to exist in every community. We want it to be on top of dinner tables every evening in all the households, black and white. We want our people to see it as the hope of the hopeless masses of our people and see it as an alternative, a party they can trust, a party that will take over and ready to take over in 2019.
Julius Malema, thank you very much for giving us your time on Kai FM 95.9.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.